A very good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good morning. Those joining us from, I think, a lot of people from US, most of us, and some, I think, in Australia. It's still, the time difference is huge. And a good afternoon to those who are joining us from the continent of Africa. Miss Kim, here we come with yet another exciting podcast from Stanzen, presented by our very own philanthropist, the person who has actually brought us back into the books business as Edis to Africa, Mr. Alfred Douglas, an aeronautical engineer who found his passion and his love in the space of producing content for children in Africa and across the globe. But I don't want to steal his voice, so I'll pass on the mic for him to do his own introduction. Stay with us. Welcome our guests. I can see Miss Shailene. You're very welcome. We're happy to have you. Our listeners, those who are listening from Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, we appreciate your presence. So you know, you can leave comments on the comment section, anything you'd like to understand, if you have some questions, and we're going to share this clip after the podcast. Thank you, and over to you, Mr. Alfred.
Good day, everyone. So excited to be here to talk about computers. This is our fourth podcast. So if you haven't watched the first three, recommend you go back in the link from Ms. Sally and watch the other three. Today, so let's just give a quick introduction for those who may be new. There's a problem worldwide, and I am going to go off my video just to save bandwidth. There's a problem worldwide where students, especially primary school students, lack basic science understanding. So our purpose in this next hour is to have a discussion about simple science, specifically on computers. We're talking about computers, and we're going to focus on three areas: how computers flow, glow, and stow. And we'll talk more about the acronym ELM. It's the journey from digital to data. Next chart, please, Miss Sally. So, as we mentioned, there's 10 topics in this series of podcasts. We've already talked about easy ideas, airplanes, and cars, and today is about computers. The purpose is what we call turnkey. We want to make this very easy for teachers. And so we've prepared all this material. We've got a teacher's guide. There's the eBook that you share with the students about how computers are easy to understand, flow, glow, and stow. For the more advanced students, we'll talk more about connected computers and networks. And for those who want the past and present, the then and now, about how computers, where we came from, where we are, and where we're going in the future, you can see the additional book there. So let's get right into the agenda. We're going to talk about a one-page summary. Those who know how this works, we cover a one-page summary, which is a roadmap of going what we call from empty to enlight. And then we'll talk about key concepts. We want to make sure that the teachers are trained. We'll go over the videos, the activities, the demonstrations. Then we get right into the class presentation, and we'll follow up with more from there. So let's get right into it. We talk about flow, glow, and stow. Electricity flows, light glows on the screens. We stow or store the data with magnets and other ways with computer. In addition to that, we have Wi-Fi, which uses the radio waves. And those of you who were with the other presentations will know that we touched on electricity and light and radio waves and magnets in the previous lessons, and now we're bringing them together to apply them to computers. Let me just catch up here. So, computers are microchip-based beating hearts of our modern world. We discuss how computers do something. We use them for applications. They control our devices, and they connect us worldwide. You can see the graphic there for electricity, light, and magnets. So many people think that computers are very complicated, and indeed they are, but the basics are very easy to understand. So today we're going to take a journey from number one, know, two to flow. I think you'll see the trend here. Glow, stow. We talk about the three words that start with IPO. Then we talk about the global networks and the connectivity. And then where is all this going? Where are we today? And where are we going in the future with computers? Flow, glow, and stow. So this is meant as a quick overview. And so those of you who this is too fast, please get a copy of this presentation and the source material from Miss Sally and go over the details. But for this purposes, we need to go over it quickly. So we need to know how computers work, the knowledge. We've talked about electricity flows. We'll get more into the 5 bits, the little bursts of energies that empower computers. We'll talk about glows and how our interface with the computer is the screen, which is basically little bursts of light. We talk about the magnets and how on and off or north and south magnets, and we're talking bits, microbits, store our data on disk drives. How astonishing it is that computers allow us to have this meeting. We've got people from around the world on this conversation. That's astonishing. How wonderful that we can communicate and connect. We take a pause and talk about input, process, and output, and how that's critical to computers. Then we take a step back and say, what if we go and explore the stars and we have a multi-world wide web, right? An MWW, and we'll talk about the future of computers, touch on artificial intelligence a little bit, but we'll save most of that for future discussions. Let's get right into 5 bits. And by a bit, we mean a burst of energy that change. And so we call them E-bits or bits of electricity that power the microchips, to the bits of magnets, the M bits that power the hard disk drives, L bits, the light bits, our screen, those millions of points of light change so many times a second to make the screens that we see. But to give us connectivity with the Wi-Fi, we need R bits, the radio waves. And we'll touch on pulling this all together in what we call a K bit or a knowledge bit. And the reason we have computers is so we can do things like this fun presentation. So, Ms. Sally, are there any questions before we proceed on? Or do you want me to just keep going?
Let's check. Thank you. Miss Shailene, any questions? Maybe we can keep going.
Yeah, sorry, not at this point. I'm good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Please, anytime you have a question, just let us know. We want to make sure we hear your voice as well. So in addition to the eBooks that we have videos. Next chart, please. And we want the teachers to be able to have, oops, go back one, please. We're on videos. There we go. So we talked about the 5 bits, and you can see the video there, which will go into more detail of the 5 bits on how computers work. We also want to give the teachers, the students, and the parents a depth of knowledge. And so we go into not just the 5 bits of how computers work, but we go into what we call 7 opposites that apply those 5 bits. For example, electricity is on or off, a 0 or a 1. For those students who are interested and want more data, in the next video is computers then and now. That's the past, and the present of how computers, where they came from, what they're doing today, and we touch on the future. Next are the activities. Go ahead, please. The demonstrations. So we want to take the L bits and use a flashlight, also called a torch in England, or you can use a simple light switch where you're flipping it on and off. But the concept is patterns of on and off electricity mean something to computers. Next, we look at getting a magnet and some metal filings and oil base, and you can actually see the magnetic field. And we talk about the magnetic field. And remember from previous lessons that electricity and magnets are related. Then we tie it all in with light and how fun it is to hold a hand lens, a magnifying glass. You hold it close to a piece of paper and you can see an upside down image right in front of your eyes. And you can also use the magnifying glass to magnify. But how fun it is for students to see the electricity, to see the magnetism, to see the light in front of them. Let's go to the next page. So once the teachers are ready with this multimedia presentation, then they get to share it with their classes. And this is perfect for in-person or online classes. But we want to make the concepts real. We focus on electricity and how these on and off patterns flow through the computer in waves, if you will, or in sequences with pushed by a clock that then process the data. But then to show us, they go to the screen and the electricity then turns into light. But it's not enough just to show us on the screen. We want to be able to save it. And so we use magnets to save the data on the hard disk drives. You can see we already went over the bits, more detail there, and then just a visual of the different bits together. So a lot of material for the teachers to prepare and present. We tried to make this very easy to understand and very broad. Let's go to the next page, please. We'll take just a pause moment and go over the acronym E, L, and M. So it's very easy for us to get caught up in what computers can do and all the different applications. But in this presentation, we step back and we say, what are the basic science that enable our computers? And so we talk about E is the electricity pulses. We talked about the light switch or the torch, the flashlight that you turn on and off, and how you say the patterns of the on and off mean something, like the letter A. And we have in the books where you can see this certain sequence of 8 patterns of on and off electricity pulses mean the letter A, and how every piece of data, every video that's streamed is a series of pulses of electricity that go through a microprocessor, also called a chip. And we'll talk a little bit about the stories behind the chips in a minute. Next page, please. But all this wonderful things that are going on inside the computer don't mean anything to us unless we can see them. And so our screens, which is astonishing how the screens are patterns of light. But in addition to that, here's the magnet. Magnets are north and south poles. Micro places on the disk get changed into north or south poles of the magnet, which represent the zeros and ones, but they don't just stay on the disk. They then transfer back into electricity, and there's constant going back and forth between the electricity, the touch screen, and the magnets, and how they all integrate together. Then we take a pause and we talk about IPO, input, right? You've got your keyboards, you've got your disks, you've got your ways to input data into the computer. Then you have a series of software. Sorry, Miss Sally, go ahead. You got a comment, a question?
I think it's Mr. Chimwemwe. Please mute. Thank you. Apologies.
No worries. So once we understand how we get things into the computer, what happens? And so many of our digital devices, young students just think they're like magic, right? They're just this little box, and you type in or you talk to it and it magically spits out an answer. But the purpose of this presentation is to help students understand it's not magic and it's easy to understand what is happening. You push the key and it turns into electricity. The electricity goes inside the chips and then it processes and then it outputs it and displays it to us, whether it's on screens or voice or printouts or saved on drives. So it's so easy to think of IPO and how computers work. Next page. Okay, so we want students to be engaged. We want teachers to be able to have the opportunity to find out what their students are learning. And so we have a series of worksheets that the students can do to test their knowledge of the parts of a computer. Then we ask them to get engaged and actually use the internet and find out examples of digital devices. And then we talk about them. And we talk about how the different digital devices, from laptops to tablets to smartphones, how those all represent the same basic steps that we're learning here. But then we talk about how we have to have software, right? And if you compare a young child before they can learn to speak, then they learn to speak, it's kind of because they've got software going on. Well, computers are the same way. It's a set of instructions that help them do things. So we give the questions to the students, and on the next page, we then answer the questions to reinforce the learning. The teacher can take pause moments and help the students if those who need additional learning to get up to where the class is. And we also want to make sure we engage the advanced learners. Next page, please. Let's see. Go back one, please. Oh, sorry. No, you're good. Okay. So let's take a pause moment. Next page, please. It was me. I flipped 2 pages. Sorry about that. So go back to connected computers, please. There we go. Perfect. So we take a pause and we say, how amazing is it that computers are connected? For those of us who grew up when computers were first coming out, remembering the standalone boxes, and you always wanted to be able to connect and communicate with others, but for so long you'd have to do it, save it on a floppy disk at that point, and go and share it with somebody visually. We called it the Adidas network because you had to physically walk over and hand people the data. But today we're connected around the world, and how wonderful this is, and how there's an interesting comparison for teachers that are like to know it. If you take a picture of the internet and you take a picture of neuron or brain cells and how similar those look from what's inside our own heads to what connects us around the world. So let's dive right on. Okay, we want to take a pause moment and give teachers the opportunity to make sure that the students that need additional information are brought up to speed with the rest of the class. This is the book called Too Much Tech. And we got a little monkey here called Ta, and he or she goes in the experience of using technology too much, and it's Ta's experiences with too much technology, and it's a pause moment to see how technology works, how we balance it in our lives. In addition to the students that need help bringing up to what the class is learning, we want to make sure that teachers and students and parents, for those who are advanced, those who already know the material, we want to make sure that we give them enough to engage as well. And so we can do that with Computers Then and Now. It's a whole nother book, a whole nother video, which goes through computers at the very beginning to where we are today, connected. In addition to learning about standalone computers, how one computer works, we want to integrate it. And so we look at the history of how computers were networked as well. We'll get to that in a minute. So if there's no more questions, let's go ahead to the next page, please. Here's computer networks. And so we also do that. We look at the internet was not the first worldwide network. That back when they had telegraphs where you pushed on it and it sent a little burst of electricity that turned into dots and dashes that represented letters, those wires actually went around the world as well. And so then it was telephone lines, and then how today we have the internet and how wonderful it is. and amazing with the Wi-Fi that we have that connects us. Like many of us on this connection are using Wi-Fi at some point to connect to the computer network. You can see the video there as well. Next page, please. Those who have joined other lessons know how much I like stories. And I think stories give us the opportunity to connect the science to what means something to our lives. But if we take just a pause moment and say, how did people come up with semiconductors? And those of you who may know the history of computers, where it started out with basically a special light bulb called the vacuum tube, and that represented one bit, one on or off data. And so it would take 8 of those to make one little byte, one little letter, if you will. And how astonishing. But they went from having vacuum tubes that they were using to amplify signals of phones, and these tubes, like light bulbs back then, would only last so long, and they were having thousands and tens of thousands of these, and they had burned out. Main point is they invented a transistor, but the way they did that is they were using a piece of silicon, and the way that it had cooled, it had different properties, and it confused them at first. But then they found out if you got a little bit of an extra element like boron or phosphorus, it would change how electricity would either flow or not flow. And people were able to use that concept over time and take where one transistor was the size of your thumbnail. And now today, in that same size of your thumbnail, we have billions of transistors. And how amazing that is, story for humanity, and how we've gone through. But students can understand how important computer chips are. For those who want more information, way back before there were any computers, a man named Charles watched a mechanical machine device play chess to people that were paying. It was called the Mechanical Turk. And in the ebook, some more examples of this. The main point is there was probably a person inside this big box that was controlling, moving the chess pieces, but it impressed him so much that he said, why can't we make mechanical computers? And he came up with one design, and then years later, we now have our electronic devices. Next chart, please. It's amazing to know how people are involved with computers. A data point is Bill Gates. Before he was the Bill Gates that we all know, he was a struggling student at Harvard, and he got a magazine that called Popular Electronics. He saw this very early computer called the Altair 880, 8800, and he quit university, went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and started a small company that made software for this little box. And that company's name was Microelectronic Software, which he shortened to Microsoft. And now today, that's interesting points about Microsoft. Apple has some interesting stories as well. Next chart, please. Let's take a pause moment. Miss Sally, anyone online have any comments or questions before we proceed?
Yes. Thank you. And it's super nice to see the history of where we're coming from. Maybe we can pause as I have a beautiful comment from LinkedIn from Kim. Kim says she's listening for her own benefits. She's not a teacher, and she's forwarded the same clip to a teacher. Isn't that cool? We assume this is just for teachers, but no,
Anyone
it's
who's interested, thank you, Miss Kim, for joining.
yes. And then maybe I'm going to give Shailene, Mr. Chimwemwe, an opportunity to greet us and tell us about himself and his main interest in joining our podcast and what his students are doing. Mr. Chimwemwe, over to you.
All right, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, pretty
Yes.
well. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. My name is Chimwemwe Shaba. I'm a teacher. I'm teaching at an international school in Zambia. So I've been teaching for about 8 years, and I have experience teaching at both primary and secondary school level. So it's very interesting to listen to the discussion and to see how I can learn some more information that I can share with my learners. Thank you.
Mr. Chimwemwe, could you please tell us, how do you use computers with your students today?
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention. I actually teach computer science. I teach ICT and computer science. So computers are what I use every day.
Excellent. We hope there's some material that we're talking about that you're able to use with your students.
Definitely, definitely.
Miss Sally, do we want to have anyone else chime in before we continue on?
Let me check, Shailene. And thank you, Mr. Chimwemwe. Great to meet you. Maybe you'll tell us what level you think this material suits. Are you teaching high school or primary?
I'm currently teaching high school, so from middle school and high school, so from year seven all the way up to A levels.
Great. Okay. So maybe as we continue, you will do an assessment for us and tell us precisely this is what we need, because we're in the business of publishing books, and Douglas with us here has published lots and lots of books, including an amazing book on AI. So you can tell us what you gauge, what you think your students want to learn, and how applicable this is to the ICT. I can imagine if you're in international schools, you're doing IGCSE, right?
Yes, we're doing IGCSES, but
Awesome.
as well, like you've said about AI and robotics and coding, those
Hmm.
are clubs. Even though IGCSE is not at that level, but the
Yeah.
material that they want us to expose our learners to. So I would definitely be interested to see what kind of materials you have in that field.
Okay. Awesome. And have you stepped up on ebooks, or you using hard copies?
We're using a combination of both.
Oh,
We do have some hard copies, but we also have some other resources which are electronic. So we're open to
mm,
using either.
okay, great, great. Thank you. So, thanks for joining us, and all the way from Zambia. And we're seeing a lot of progress with Zambia and innovation. We see you a lot
Yeah.
on your socials. You're taking your teams, especially for coding and robotics. You're doing a good job. So we'll
Thank
come
you.
back
Thank
to
you.
you. Yeah, we'll come back to you with more questions. Mr. Alfred, please allow me to express my excitement. You know, Africans, there's a thing we do. When we get excited, we dance. So can I just get up and do my dance?
Yes, please. We all could. That'd be good for all of us.
And guess why I want to do my dance? Because your partner, the person who does all the hard work of doing illustrations for these books, has finally joined us. Mr. Ramon is in the house. I think we need to clap hands for Mr. Ramon. Mr. Ramon, are you ready to speak? Awesome.
Hello,
Okay.
Miss
Thank
Kim.
you.
Hello, Mr. Alford.
So good to have you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Do you want to tell us anything?
I just joined in, sir, madam. I'll just listen first.
You're so harassed, right? We're going to come back to you. Thank you
Thank
Mr.
so
you.
much.
Ramon, if if you could gather your thoughts and in a few minutes, just tell us a little bit about your experience in helping with all the ebooks and how you use computers to do the ebooks and the videos. We'd just appreciate your input in a few minutes, please.
Okay, sir.
Miss Sally, do we want to continue or other
I
introductions?
think so. Let's
Okay.
continue. So we give him a few minutes. But Shailene, I'm not sure you're ready. You didn't do your intro, or we'll come back to you on the next break. Thank you. Over to you.
So we want to make sure that teachers and anybody that's just interested in the subject of using computers, right? And it's fun more so than the other topics that we've talked about, computers are one that parents seem to get the most excited about because we all use these digital devices. And so we appreciate Miss Kim and others who are on, who are just interested in the subject, right? You can't listen to the news today without hearing about artificial intelligence or how computers are impacting jobs, or even just the way we use computers, right? So let's go back one, please, Miss Sally. Let's have a quick chat about compare and contrast. So we want young students to understand that computers have not always been around. We want those of us who've been around for a little while to understand that computers are changing to the future. So they apply to all of our lives. But we take a pause moment and we look at the room size computers. These ones use light bulbs to represent each bit instead of transistors. And then what we have in our hand top today, or we look at the computer that controlled the Apollo spacecraft where we went to the moon all those years ago, right? And how that's different than what we have in our hands today. And so we talk about the compare and the contrast, the past and the present, and how computers are changing in the future. If there's no questions, next chart, please. So computers have to do something, right? And so way back when a person was first getting an idea about punch cards, and he noticed that, this is back in the 1800s, that a series of a card called a jacquard loom from France with holes or no holes was used to control a weaving machine to make patterns in cloth, and he used that then to use punch cards to get data from the census, which is every 10 years America goes and counts its people and gathers data. And they were getting ready at the end of the 1800s, near 1900s, to start the next one, and they hadn't finished processing all the data from the previous 10 years. They knew they had to do something. So using holes or no holes, he was able to then gather all this data, and that was a start. Interestingly, that company later became IBM, but you have to read the book about that. So we take a pause when we say most people use word processing, Excel spreadsheets or other software apps, and even PowerPoints. And we take and look in this video about how those three applications and how they're important. And then we expand it to other applications, everything from TikTok to LinkedIn to YouTube, and how that impacts our lives. And so we look at the applications, both in the operating systems that are behind the computers doing all the tasks, and then how we use the applications to do things. We use computers to do things. Computers are tools for us and they do things, right? So if there's no questions, next chart, please. At the end of the presentation, we request or encourage the teachers to take a pause and to recap what we've learned. We've learned about patterns of on and off electricity and how that are the pulses, the beating hearts, if you will, of the computers, and how that changes data from what we input into what we output. We look at how data is stored on hard disk drives and M bits and magnetic bits. We look at how we can see the information because of light bits, how bits of light are changing, and bits of light, millions of bits of light on a computer screen are constantly refreshed. Some of our current devices are like 100 times a second. Your screen is changing, but it's so fast, and it makes it look like we can stream movies. We talk about radio waves and how important they are to the Wi-Fi, to the Bluetooth, right? And indeed to the internet. But then we also say, what is all this for? What do we use computers? And so we have something called a K-bit. And that's something the team has come up with. And that's just digital knowledge. And how wonderful. And we're so happy as a charitable organization to be involved in sharing knowledge, exactly what we're doing here. So we call those K-bits. And it's just bits of data or packets of data are sent around the world. And so we call those K-bits. Main point, computers look difficult, but they're actually easy to understand. Okay? So let's take a pause moment. Next chart. There we go. And what does all this mean to each of us? What does this mean to me? Right? Each one of us asked that question. Miss Sally, if we could open it up to any questions and comments, please.
Yes, thank you. Miss Shailene, do you have some questions? Miss Shailene is also an ICT trainer, computer studies, coding, robotics. Would you like to pose with some questions?
Not at this point. I'm good.
Okay. Would you like to do an intro? What your experience teaching
Okay.
kids?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shireen Mubani. I am a STEAM enthusiast. Yes, I do work with kids, and I am getting a lot more information during this podcast, especially on computers. I do see the importance of taking kids back and then, taking them through the journey of computers and for them to just constantly embracing the changes, but still touching on and briefing them on the history. So I think it's awesome. I I don't think I have any questions.
Miss
Um,
Charlene, I have a question for you, if I could, please.
yes, please.
What's the number one interest of your students? What is their key care about? What do they care about on computers? If you don't mind just sharing that with us.
I think honestly, it's because they don't really get to interact with the hardware per se. I work with young kids from the ages of about 6 to 10. So they just have a lot of curiosity on what is that they're, fiddling with. That's what I can say. We're still trying to take them slowly through the journey of, the mouse and all that stuff. But I think that's what they always seem to be intrigued by.
And I'll ask an open-ended question you don't need to answer, but we appreciate you keeping it in mind. How do
Mhm.
we take all this material and make it easy to understand and applicable to young lives? We appreciate any feedback you can give us just to make sure we're doing a good job of that.
All right. Let me ponder on that, then I think I can give my remarks in the last minute, if that's okay.
That's okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate 6 to 8 year old, or you said six to 10, you said you deal with,
Yes.
right? That's
Yes.
awesome. But
Thank
if
you.
one of the purposes we're trying to do is to integrate the hardware, the software, and how we
Mm-hmm.
use computers. So we
Yeah.
understand today, so we're ready for how this changes, right? Computers are constantly controlling more and more aspects of our lives, right? We use computers at work. We use computers to control machines that make the parts, including the computers and the digital devices. And now we have artificial intelligence on the scene that we all need to understand better, right? And I would say influence, because AI can't just happen. We need to give it influence to make sure it's a positive impact to us. So fantastic topic. Thank you for your comments, Miss Charlene.
Most welcome.
Mr.
So,
Ramon, sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm glad you're calling out Mr. Ramon. Please go ahead.
Mr. Ramon,
Hello.
not putting you on the spot, but could you just give us a quick overview? You've been working with the charitable organization for quite a while now, pushing 10 years. Can you
Yes,
kind of
sir.
just explain how you use computers to do the ebooks and then also the videos? Just keep your topics at a high level, but talk to us, walk us through the great work you use computers for.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name's Ramon. I've been working with Mr. Alfred for the past almost a decade now, and I've been helping him design the ebooks and videos that we are using in our programs. And one of the things that I do for him is use the computer basically to design these ebooks, to lay out the contents of the ebooks, and print them for dissemination to the teachers and the students online and by print. Also, I've been doing videos also using licensed softwares actually, uh, for Mr. Alford for our videos using for different subject matters. And what sir, can I, before I forget, can I have a little input on what we have been discussing? Because
Yes,
sir,
please.
I from what I've heard so far, sir, uh, the problem, no, not the problem. I think, sir, this is for a STEM audience, right, Miss Sally, or sir? Is this for general, sir? Because I believe, sir, our the contents of our materials can be can not can be I think uh, grouped into different levels, sir. Maybe for higher levels, maybe we can uh,
Good
uh,
point.
sir, maybe for early learners, maybe we can not overwhelm information for the young people. Maybe just to spark their curiosity to learning more about computers or other subjects, and maybe on a different level or higher levels we can dissect each subject matter, like for example the parts of the computers, the how the data can be saved in disk drives, how the optical cameras work. Maybe we can dissect a little bit more for higher students. I don't know if I'm making sense, sir, but can this be possible on our program later, sir? Just a little.
Definitely. The program's applicable to multi levels of students.
Yes, sir. But uh, 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 just my input, sir. For maybe I'm just thinking ahead that if we are presenting a lot of what do you call this, detailed materials or detailed information for younger audiences, or maybe if we're presenting simple presentations to a much higher level of students with higher thinking level, maybe uh, I don't know, sir, if I can be
Good
making.
question. Let's take a pause, sir, Mr. Ramon, and let's see if Ms. Charlene or Mr. Chimwemwe would like to weigh in on this, on what they think. How do we address this topic of important topic of computers to different levels of students?
Yes, sir.
Anybody online want to weigh in on that answer?
Miss Charlene, over to you. I can't see Mr. Chimwemwe. Maybe the internet is acting up.
How do we
Miss
address
Charlene,
multiple levels?
can I make an attempt as we wait for Miss Charlene?
Yes, please.
I think I will just dive deep into the STEAM education philosophy, where what we do within the STEAM education training, the projects are mostly project based learning and it's teamwork, which is extremely learner centered. So you find it can be the same concept, but you give children or students assignments, they come up with a project within the same curriculum. So then it doesn't matter because you'll see the outcome from an 18-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old. They will do using the same concept, but they'll come up with a different outcome, basing it on their level of thinking. So yes, there's need to introduce it with the mind of what exactly suits a 10-year-old and what is suitable for a 7-year-old. But in the space of computing, it challenges me where sometimes we find we have some kids who are programming extremely well. They're way past scratch. They're doing Python and they're 7 years. And we have a 21-year-old, a university student who has never had that opportunity, who is still learning basics in computing. Am I making sense?
Yes, perfect. Ms. Sally, could you mention a little bit about your coding books that you have available as well?
Yes, we do. We have okay. Essentially, I feel like coding robotics. It's not about theory. It should be very very practical. But then, of course, in global South, because of scarcity of resources, so we still come up with we produce books on coding, robotics, artificial intelligence. They're extremely learner centered. It's actually a workbook. So children go on a journey using that book. It's extremely personalized. It's very basic, but it's still a 7-year-old who has reading skills can use that book, and an 18-year-old can use the same book. The only difference is we have a QR code that takes you to the website that now you select the course you want to do, which some of the courses that are very advanced, we note it there that this would be suitable for an 18-year-old or something like that.
How do people listening get copies of both the book on coding and the books that we're talking about here?
Thank you, Mr. Alfred. They're all on our website, which is www.edustoafrica.com. And I will share on all our platforms. And we're also going to share this, this link. We always share this link again. We edit after we broadcast live, and then it's shared every Tuesday. So teachers who are listening, you can share with your students, you can share with your colleagues.
Ms. Sally, if we can change topics to art, part of the STEAM, and you're encouraging me is to make sure we talk about art, right? So,
Yes.
and Ms. Charlene talked about this earlier. One of the things that we are using is we have people illustrators that do a lot of our art that then gets scanned, but we've just started using artificial intelligence to make some of our pictures. And it's fun for students to draw their own pictures, to use that picture in the computer, but then also see what artificial intelligence is doing. So computers with the million plus colors that the screens can do, it's so fun to see, to use the application both with people and with applications, but to actually use it for art. Anybody online have any comments about how we use computers for art, please?
I'm sure Shailene would like to comment on that.
I'm sorry, how we use computers for art?
Yeah.
And what sense? When incorporating AI?
Any level you'd like to talk about. How do we use computers to encourage student creativity, including art?
I think I would concur with Miss Kim and the strategy that we usually use, where children should incorporate storytelling, where like you would relate computer topics to stories or like real life examples. That's the artistic side of it, having kids be creative and imaginative. Other ways is emphasizing on them making models out of card boxes or whatever it is that they have within their surrounding, just for them to have an appreciation, the sketching, drawing, things of that nature. That's also part of hands-on learning. I mean, hands-on learning where we can move on to the other aspects of coding, using Scratch and Blockly. I think that's how I would go about incorporating art into it. And also art, I think already via books such as this, by using, keeping it visual, using colorful imagery, having interactive games, yeah, things of that nature.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Sally, are there any other comments from anyone online?
Yes, we have quite a number of comments that I can read out. Kim is super excited and wants to have the son join, who is 12 years. So I'll be sending the content to Kim, and then we can invite the son for next Saturday session as one of our guests. And that's all the way from Philadelphia. And then we have Charito. So Charito is one of our keen listeners. She joins our audio rooms, and she's also listening from Philippines. Thank you. I think we can proceed.
Hello, Miss Kim. Can I add something, sir, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Uh, also regarding the computers on art, my daughter who is also doing some artworks for Mr. Alfred before, also is a computer science student right now. She already graduated, but something I would like to share, because art, I think, we need to do, because for example, my daughter uses different types of tools in drawing art for Mr. Alfred before, like digital pens, digital pads, interactive interfaces and software. I think what we can encourage students or kids now, because the problem is not everyone art art demands creativity, but not everyone or not every child has the creativity in them, inherent or inborn. But what do we need to develop for them is inspire or spark the interest or creativity to use whatever at their disposal, gadgets or whatever computer materials they have on hand, to spark their interest to pursue using computers to develop their art. I agree with is this Miss Charlene, what she mentioned earlier, that they're providing some interactive games or such. But I think one way that we can help children is that provide them with the encouragement to use these gadgets that they have, whatever, however simple they are. It could be simple digital pens or iPads, to use different softwares. There can be different levels of softwares in the market for depending on primary, secondary, or advanced levels, to draw pictures or images to develop their skills. I think, does that make sense, madam?
That makes sense. Good comments. Thank you, Sir Ramon. Miss Sally, with the few minutes we have left, do you mind if we change to computers as entertainment? And then we'll touch on artificial intelligence. But a lot of teachers have expressed concerns around the world that their students see computers as toys, not just as tools to learn from. And so while video games can be fun, our answer to that is we have a video on video games, on how it works. And so using video games and the social media and the entertainment aspects of computers as a teaching opportunity to how computers work. And so they realize that, hey, that behind the video games is a whole lot of science in the real world, and then also the science to get it embedded in the computer so that you take a 3D world in the software and display it on a 2D screen. And it's a real opportunity to take the entertainment and make it share the information. Let's go to the next page, please. We can't talk about computers without addressing artificial intelligence. And in a previous lesson, we talked about electricity and how before they had electricity, they noticed frog legs and then noticed that it was the two different metals that led to the battery, right? We talked about cars, how they work, airplanes, how they work, between airplanes and birds and bugs and bats and butterflies, and how you can look at all these different ones and apply the same science principles. And today we're talking about computers. But each of these pictures was made by typing text into Bing DAL-E image creator, and then it came up through a series of iterations with these pictures. And so definitely using entertainment, using the information, and using artificial intelligence to engage students and getting them excited in the topic. Are there any questions or comments?
I think we're good for now. I can go to the next slide.
So we're almost done. We wanted to touch on Internet of Things, right? We're hearing a lot about how computers are integrating and how we use our senses to gather information of the world. And now Internet of Things are installing, embedding sensors that if you want to know what's in your fridge or what needs to be ordered or what the patterns, so that it can help manage that for you. If your computer is having issues, you can track those and it can report back right? And there's a wonderful opportunity to connect all the digital devices in our lives and be able to share data between them. There are also concerns about what happens if this data gets in the wrong hands and people want to use it. We see how software like Amazon and YouTube use what we view and what we buy, and then it presents us with more of the same. But there's concerns about that data. But the Internet of Things is emerging, it's with us, and understanding that. So we're just about coming to the end of this presentation. If I could make a final comment, computers are exciting. They can look so complex. Computers are actually easy to understand. The computer applications are applicable to all of our lives. So it's an exciting topic. I really appreciate being here and being able to talk this with you. We've got a lot of data for teachers, students, parents, and just those who are interested in the subject. It impacts all of our lives. We're so happy to be part of this conversation. Back to you, Miss Sally.
Thank you. Thank you, Douglas. You've done the session justice. It's interesting when you look at all the different perspectives, and I think I love it more that you're making it very easy for children to understand the history of computers. And yes, a very important point you mentioned that our children are still looking at computers as gadgets to have fun. It's playing that game. To some extent, yes, it's still a good idea, but they still need to look at this as a tool that can progress your life in so many ways, from career-wise to getting so many other opportunities in life. And so we speak, computer skills, it's no longer a nice to have skill. It is literally a must have. And obviously, as we get our governments up to the task, which currently a lot of governments, especially in Africa, now computer studies are compulsory in schools. We still need to take it up upon ourselves as educators, as part of the global community, and ensure that our kids are getting computer skills. I know we could talk about challenges with infrastructure, but speaking for Africa, we are on 86% smartphone penetration. Smartphone is an amazing gadget. We actually putting our eBooks now into an app so that children in the village, in marginalized communities, they can be able to access those books. With partnerships, trying to partner with telco and many other organizations that can give us access to data. So all you need is data, but learning should continue. And we saw it with COVID. We did a lot of learning, training, teaching kids, just using smartphones. So thank you, and happy to have Mr. Ramon finally, and Ms. Shailene. You could give us your closing remarks, and thank you to our listeners. Thank you. What I would love to add is please get on our website, look at the resources we have. If there's a particular book you're looking for and you can't find it on the website, just send us a message, send us an email. Mr. Douglas and his team are producing a lot of books for the African market, and we obviously want to find out what is your pleasure point? What are you looking for? If you're working with marginalized communities and you are interested in our resources, but you don't have a budget, please let's start the conversation. As we look for donors, we also talk about a specific region where we can say, we have a lot of inquiries from Zambia, we have inquiries from Zanzibar, so and so is doing this and that in Zimbabwe. Then we ensure that once we get funding, that becomes our priority where we don't take the resources. Currently, you can access the resources as ebooks. Just send me a message. You can drop it on LinkedIn, you can on Facebook, or you can email us or put leave a message, a comment on the website, and then we can send you a link on specific books that you'd like to access. That is mostly for marginalized communities. Otherwise, if you can be able to afford a book, we request you. Our books are from $2, $3, $5. We've tried our best to make them affordable. And thank you to Mr. Douglas who donated the books. So the funding part where we still fundraising is because we'd love to ensure that we are able to print books for children within those communities that want to access books, but they don't have the gadgets and they need to access a printed book. So that covers the cost of printing, marketing, and distribution of resources. Otherwise, we're coming to the end of our session. I would love to give the mic to Mr. Ramon, Miss Shailene, and finally, Mr. Douglas. You give us your 1 minute closing remark. And we say, please, if you want to come in as a guest next Saturday, just send us a message. We're happy to host you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss
Over to
Ali.
you,
Just
Mr.
a few
Ramon.
seconds. Thank you, Miss Ali. Just a few seconds. Aside from the security and the dependency issue with computers, as Mr. Alfred uh, mentioned, in the end of his book, there is a beautiful comment that that a beautiful subject, a topic that he mentioned, that we should be careful in the future, considering the AI progression in our world. That may we be aware and also be informed that to be careful not to let AI control us, to not to let AI take over our lives in the future and control us eventually. So we should also be in control of AI. Uh, that's what his gist in the ending of his ebook. So that's a very beautiful subject, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, that'll be a nice topic to have at some point. Thank you, Mr. Ramon. Shailene, the mic is yours.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Alford and Miss Kim, for having this podcast. I think there was a lot of insight to pick up from that. And I just think it's amazing how computers and tech is ever evolving. There's always something new to discover. Still stuck on that, what was it, discussion regarding how most students still view computers as just for fun or for social activities and things of that nature. Just wanting to tap into my reserve as well and see how we can at least help change that. Because I know with my age group, they also just view it as something for fun. Anytime they come to the classroom, they're saying, can we play Roblox or can we play this game? It's not generally a tool that they perceive to be used for learning and discovery. But thank you for this. I look forward to more engaging and insightful podcasts such as this. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Great discussions on computers. They're with us. They're easy to understand. They're applicable to our lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much and goodbye. See you next Saturday.
Goodbye.